So, if you had to do it all over again, would you have started at South by instead of Cannes?
I don't. I think that, look, it gave the film character.
That's true.
You know, it gave it some character. So it's part of the history of the movie, and it's fine. I mean, high school prepares you for all this stuff anyway.
Because people can be mean.
Well, I mean, it's true though. They're not dissimilar. Anytime you stick your neck out in high school, there's someone that's just, right there to chop it off. So it really preps you.
Because I went and saw the film at Cannes. I'm sitting there in that theater. I'm watching it with everybody else. And I'm thinking, this is a really good first film. This is really well done.
Thanks, Sam.
This is incredibly well shot. It's got great music. It's got great atmosphere. He's got a great cast. I'm enjoying this. And I literally tweeted something along those lines afterwards, and I was pretty surprised at what the tenor of a lot of these reviews were. And I'm convinced that if it had been a first-timer no one knew of, it's almost like it's an actor, well-known actor who's done well at Cannes in the past. It's almost like, but by the way, was there a difference between the English language and the other countries and the reactions in other countries at Cannes?
I don't really know. I sort of, because I was there with my French distributor, I only kind of did French press, which I think if I could do differently, that's what I would do differently, is just been talk to more people.
Because Warner Brothers was supposedly releasing it at that point.
Yeah, but at that time it was just sort of set up by my French distributor, and that's all I ended up doing. And I was just dealing with the film, and I hadn't really dealt with what the press was going to be. How much of it I was going to do.
When did you finish the film?
And so there was
because you shot it like a year before Cannes.
Yeah, so I finished it. I really just finished it a few months before Cannes. And the first time I saw it was there. The first time I saw it in a theater.
Wow.
I saw it in my basement, but suddenly I'm in a tuxedo with all those people watching it, and it was, I think it's surreal enough to see your first film with an audience, but to see it in that context was extreme.
Are you a harsh critic of yourself? I mean, were you like, oh, I wish I could change this, or I could change that, or were you feeling pretty tickled with it?
No, all you see is the flaws, but that's your job, and that's what makes it better. You have to be hard on it. You have to be harder on it than anyone. But you also have to see the promise of it too, because you can't just like dismiss something altogether. You have to, see the potential in it and be like critical in those terms and trying to sort of like weed it so that what's strongest about it can sort of have the light.
But you knew going in that this was a fairly artful movie. This you obviously had, who were your inspirations for this? Everybody keeps saying that you were channeling other people. I'm actually curious to know who you really were following, if you were following anyone, because this is a very personal thing. You wrote it yourself. You had the idea to go to Detroit.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of things. So I'm from Canada. Like anyone who grows up anywhere else in the world, you look to America. America is like the pinup girl in your locker. I had a very romanticized idea of the States and of Detroit, and it took me a long time to get to Detroit, but I got there when I was 30, and it was very different than I had imagined it in two ways. One is that, and this is important to note, that there's a really exciting energy there right now. There's a real sense of rebirth and a lot of creativity, a lot of creative people going there, a lot of pride, a lot of energy. And it's just something that is inspiring and makes you want to work there and be there. And at the same time, there's miles of abandoned neighborhoods. And within those neighborhoods, there are occasionally families trying to hold on to their homes and their lives, even though the world around them is being torn down and burnt down. So I was just affected by that. I wanted to, had a specific kind of experience with that. I wanted to share it, and it felt like, directing this film was the way to do that. And, but I didn't want to make it specific to Detroit because it felt like kind of what these families were experiencing was more universal somehow. And I felt like a fairy tale format is the best way to sort of make it the most accessible for everyone, and to try and so I could focus on the emotional landscape of the characters as opposed to just the physical or socioeconomic landscape. And I wanted to see it through the filter of a couple of kids who were sort of trying to romanticize what was happening to them so that they could make it seem important somehow, that there was an evil spell that had been cast on this place, that made their experience important and romantic somehow.
You also brought a lot of sympathy to the mother character played by Christina Hendricks, who you worked with on Drive.
Yeah.
And I wondered how much that had to do with your own growing up with a single mom.
Well, I grew up with a single mom, and she was very beautiful, and still is. And when you're a young kid growing up with a single mom, I think, at least to me, I don't think I'm alone. Men kind of feel like wolves. There's a very predatory vibe to the world suddenly. Guys would whistle at her at the street, or a car would circle and then come back again and come back again, and they were like sharks. And it felt very threatening. And it felt, it was, if you're a kid and you can't do anything about it, it's frustrating, and you have you start to imagine scenarios in which you could be more effective.
So you're kind of a young kid who doesn't have that kind of adult power yet. Where did you find Ian DeCasticker? He's a remarkable. So he's playing you in a weird way.
No, because the thing is,
it's fiction.
It's fiction. It's a fairy tale. He's the prince. She's the princess. There's the wizard, the queen. There's all those archetypes, and I just was using that. When I was in these neighborhoods, in a way, the world, like the physical world there, felt like kind of what it felt like to be a kid, and I was just brought back to that time in my life, films that I was watching when I was that age, which goes back to influences. The truth is that the films that we referenced on this movie were like Goonies, The Secret of Nim, and
I see that.
Like Purple Rain to a certain degree, maybe Rumblefish, this, but more of those like kind of, like The Secret of Nim, Goonies kind of thing, like, this family's like sort of their livelihood, their home is at the mercy of these like external forces, and there's some sort of like magical realist element that like can somehow make it, these kids feel like they can help,
I liked the gothic fantasy feel of it. One of my favorite images is the one where you have this. How did you come up with this submerged city and the image? You had some very powerful images. One of them is the streetlights lighting up while he's in the boat, which would be impossible, obviously. But
the thing that happened was when I was a kid, I found this, like, I saw this road going into the river, and I learned that they had submerged some towns in order to make the river that our town was adjacent to. And that really, fucked with me, because the idea that I had been swimming in this river where there might have been like a house or who knows what beneath me, it was almost enough to make me not want to take a bath if that's where the water was coming from. I felt really betrayed that no one told me that, and it always kind of stuck with me. And when I was in these neighborhoods, in a way, I kind of, it reminded me a lot of those towns, you know, because there's a submerged quality to these places. It feels like you're looking at like footage of the Titanic or something, you know. It's like shipwrecked, you know. There's in some cases there's, you know, like photographs on the table and clothes in the drawers and baseball cards on the wall, and it just looks like everyone vanished.
I thought the visual detail in the film was just sublime.
Thank you.
So talk about your production designer, your DP, and how you came to choose them.
Well, my cinematographer is Benoit Deby, and he's, I don't think I'm alone, he's one of the best cinematographers
Gaspar Noé.
alive,
Yeah.
Gaspar Noé. And he's somebody that, like, other filmmakers that I've worked with are always referencing. You know, he's the one. You know, he's the guy that everyone looks to. And 10 years ago, I wrote a script about child soldiers having been to Uganda that I sent to him just on a lark. And he read it and agreed to do it, which was shocking because I wasn't expecting that. I was just in my early 20s, and I wasn't in a place in my life or in my career to get it off the ground. But I did feel like, you know, I had a score to settle with Benoit Deby because I promised him a movie. And so when I went to Detroit, had this experience, started filming, I reached out to him, and he agreed. So that was a dream collaboration for me. You know, you know, we shot on film, which is like, it's not nothing to brag about, but it's rare to be able to do that, and you can't do that unless you have someone fighting for that with you, and especially someone like Benoit. So, you know, we shot on film. We shot with very fast lenses, so we didn't have to use light, so we could shoot with natural light, so we could try and capture what's
It was very dark.
naturally dark but beautiful about these places. And also, he's very collaborative in the sense that, you know, he would shoot and then he'd give me the camera and I would shoot, and we would kind of go back and forth in finding the scene. And for me, it was important to shoot too, because that's how I, you know, could be in the scene and connect to it.
Interesting. So you went. That's on some level an old-fashioned way of doing things. But the casting, you went to this cast it place.
Yeah, Cast It's great.
As though you were like, I don't want to do it the way they do it. I want to do it a different way. Or had you come across it yourself online?
No, well, I had, like, when they auditioned for the Mickey Mouse Club, it's because they were going way off the beaten path to find people. And I'm from a small town. I certainly didn't know anybody who knew agents or anything like that. So the fact that there was a place for me to audition for something was a very huge opportunity, and because of that, I mean, I'm here talking to you. So I felt like it was exciting, you know, what this Cast It site is doing, because you don't have to have an agent to audition for things. And I'm telling you, I wish I could make a movie just out of the auditions, because there were so many different kinds of people audition. They auditioned in so many different ways. They personalized them. Some were like short films. Some were...
Well, it's another way where technology is changing the way we do things.
It was like wildly intimate, and really helped you to see your movie in like hundreds of different ways, because you go down the road with this person as your lead, and I saw the movie in so many different incarnations, you know. So it was very helpful for me, just like as approaching it, to see it that many ways.
So that's where you found your lead.
So I found Ian there, and I just think Ian is, you know, Ian was incredible, because he came a month beforehand, and he started stripping copper in these buildings. He found a guy that stripped copper, and he lives the life of this kid, and he brought just an authenticity to it that helped root the fantasy.
So a lot of the sites that you had sort of on your own, did your own location scouting. Did you go back to those? I
did. You know, there's a nice moment for me where when I was alone and shooting, I went into this stage called the Palace, which has a great like music history, and I think it's the first place that the Stooges ever performed in Detroit. And I shot the shot starting from the ceiling, and you pan down and you reveal the theater and there's a hole in the stage. And I thought to myself, when I make this movie, my lead actor is going to come out of that hole. He's going to be born into this film. And then a year later, we went back with Ian, and he comes out of the hole. So there's a year between those two shots.
That's great. I love it when
fact.
the magic of film.
Right.
So some of your original shooting that isn't 35 is in the film.
So it's a mix between my red footage, the 35 millimeter, and then some GoPro.
All right. So I'm picking up. So you've been writing all along since you were a kid.
Not really. I mean, I wrote my first screenplay when I was like 20. I think I was like 22.
But were you like a short story witer or
No, I never wrote, and I only. It's still, I don't think it's my strength by any means, but it's like was the only way to do it,
So I guess I'm picking up on a kind of creative energy that you brought to this. That you were enthusiastic and excited, and it clearly was a pleasurable, gratifying experience. And a lot of actors often feel like they're serving other masters, and this gives them directing gives them another outlet. Did you feel that, and are you excited about going forward with it?
Well, I've been lucky to work with directors recently who kind of have treated it like a collaboration, and by sort of by virtue of that, you're in on the process, and you feel like it's because I think on some level it seemed like magic, directing. And it, not to demystify it, but it is when you see it in action, you realize that these are just like really insisting people, people who just insist that you keep going, that you do it again, that you get that location, that you make it happen. They just insist, and they insist until it becomes real. And when you see that, you realize, it's just a lot of hard work, and they just work harder than anybody, and that's kind of daunting, but it's exciting to realize that's the secret, But for me, it wasn't about directing. It was that I had this experience. Like at first, it was that I had this experience in Uganda that I wanted to. I just knew how I would present it, and the same was with this film. That I had an impression of the way that people were living in these neighborhoods, and I wanted to share that. And it was the intention is not to make something dark or obscure or even, like, dare I say it, artistic. It was to really try and convey this experience in a way that felt like the simplest way to do that. And for me that was to sort of treat it like a fairy tale.
So how do you feel about the idea of the movie going out to theaters and VOD at the same time? What's your position on that?
I think it's exciting because, truthfully, I see 90% of the movies I see on iTunes, and I see movies I never would have seen otherwise, and I see them when I'm ready to see them, and so I think for someone like myself that likes specialty, personal, sort of intimate films, that it's exciting because you really can find your audience now, whereas before you'd have to live near like an art house theater, and you have to be compelled to go to it. But now it's really available to everybody. So I think it's great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.